Take a boat, hop a train, catch a plane, make a run for the border. Because for a limited time, Taco Bell has lowered the price of its new grilled chicken fajita to just 99 cents. A deal this hot won't last forever, so get going. Get a grilled chicken fajita for just 99 cents. Taco Bell has the road to make a run for the border.
Welcome to the Beau Show. Do any of you remember that classic Taco Bell commercial from about 1988? The theme was make a run for the border. Well, here we are in 2021 and people are still making a run for the border, but not to Taco Bell to get a 99-cent taco, but rather easy peasy American citizenship thanks to Joe Biden's lax immigration policies. So here's my updated commercial with me singing and rearranging the song.
Craving the crystal clear waters of the Rio Grande? Then come to Del Rio, Texas. Taco Bell has the road to make a run for the border.
This border crisis has been festering ever since he took office because his message was to tell all the immigrants to come on over, bring their families, their poor, their huddled masses, their COVID, their measles, their mumps, no vaccine required or vaccine passport, just bring it on. Immigrants have been crossing the border in Del Rio, Texas, and camping out in droves. Press Secretary Jen Psaki tried to dodge the question of whether these immigrants are being asked for their vaccination status, since every other person flying in the United States is asked that. She said that they are still following Title 42, which was a Trump-era regulation that would deport migrants based on a public health crisis, like COVID. Trump put this in place, and Biden has quietly begun to enforce it and fight for it in court. This has put the Biden administration in a bit of a pickle as they battle between immigration promises and public health measures. I can understand why Title 42 exists. We here in America have been locked down, and many people lost their businesses, and travel came to a screeching halt. But migrants who came across the border at very unsecure, porous locations just kept coming. And some of the latest stats show that 15,000 migrants, many of them from Haiti, were camping out underneath a bridge near the Del Rio crossing. Now, a bus that was carrying migrants from Del Rio to Brownsville, Texas, was overtaken by the migrants, and they all just ran out and fled. There was no law enforcement on board. Now, it's true that Haiti is recovering from an earthquake as well as political turmoil. But once again, we came to their aid years ago during an earthquake. And as I recall, the Clinton Foundation was supposed to be there to save the day. In 2010, according to the Clinton Foundation website, they raised $16.4 million. Since that time, the foundation boasts that they have raised more than $30 million for Haiti. So where in the world did that money go? They say they didn't take a penny in overhead, although how would we really know that? So if that's true, where in God's green earth did $46 million go? We just don't know. But the simple answer is corruption. Bill Malugin of Fox reports that according to Texas Department of Public Safety, as of Tuesday morning, there were 332 husband and wife combos where the wife is pregnant under that bridge in Del Rio. 6,728 family units, 1,579 single males, and 493 single females. The family part of this and the unaccompanied minors can be exploited since they have been regularly let in. This is where you get into the drug and human trafficking problem. Not to mention the way that the cartels are able to exploit this weakness in policy. Migrants are supposed to go through Border Patrol points of entry in order to be processed. But now with these loopholes and weaker points of entry, they are having to be flown to Border Patrol facilities or elsewhere, which is an expense to us and also a greater public health risk, as places like New York and Los Angeles require masks indoors regardless of vaccination status. You could have guessed that the highly liberal New York City and Los Angeles legislators would impose this again. Yet they are also places that are sanctuary cities. So you can see the quandary that they're in. They want to welcome the migrants, but they don't know how to deal with the health and mandate part of the equation. You would think that they'd be down there jabbing their arms before they could even get them onto the bus. But now wait. Would that be intruding on their rights or their medical freedom? Do you see the lack of logic in all of this? Jen Psaki stated that these migrants who are coming don't have an intention to stay. That's a lie. Again, Bill Malugan, who has been reporting there, says that the migrants he's speaking to have every intention of staying in the U.S. permanently. This is a mass failure of the Biden administration to deal with this and to inform us of the reality of their intentions. According to DHS reports, of the 15,000 that were under that bridge, only 1,400 were deported back to Haiti, meaning that 90% of them merely got a notice to appear or a notice to report while remaining here in the U.S. That's the BS of this whole deal. Less than half of those people will actually appear. And of those, even less will be granted legitimate asylum. So these migrants know what they are doing. They've been coached by the cartels. They know what to say. And I think the question we all have to ask lawmakers is, why is it that those who cross our southern border illegally are any better than those who are stuck in Europe or elsewhere? We also just absorbed a whole lot of Afghan refugees, of which some are without a doubt surreptitious terrorists who will sit tight and then create a cell. Are any of them vaccinated? I don't think so. In fact, 2 brand new Afghan refugees were just charged with federal sex crimes and domestic abuse at Fort McCoy. And let's face it, they wouldn't have had to come here if Biden hadn't botched the Afghanistan withdrawal, which led to the return of the Taliban. And the Biden administration does not want the public and the media to know that it is enforcing Title 42. He's actually seeing that what Trump did at the border was logical, in spite of the Dems saying how inhumane it was. The scene in Del Rio is a makeshift tent city, but that's nothing new because this has happened all over Gavin Newsom's California. But with 15,000 people just setting up a tent city is clearly a health crisis. But do you see anyone from the Democrat Party down there enforcing a mask mandate or social distancing? Do you see them fining people like Pelosi did in the House? Do you see any forced vaccinations while they wait? I mean, 15,000 people is a lot of people in one spot. CNN was criticizing college football stadiums last weekend. So where do they stand on this? And why didn't law enforcement protect this crossing area on the Rio Grande? Why did they just allow this to go unfettered? And people are literally making a run for the border. Or, I guess since no one is really turning them back, they're kind of casually strolling to the border. And even when DHS is courteous enough to fly these illegal immigrants back to Haiti, they are creating disruptions with the flight crew on the tarmac. And if you wanted just a sense of how easy it is to cross from Ciudad Acuña in Mexico over to Del Rio, Texas, take a look at this video.
So on this side, Ciudad Acuña, Mexico, here we have the Haitians behind me, Haitian migrants who are stuck here. They actually will load up their supplies, and you guys can see they've used this rope, and with the rope, they'll hold on to the rope, and you can see the man in the red shirt, he has a bag of supplies. He's actually, that's the U.S. side. That's Del Rio. You guys can see the Border Patrol is up there with a couple of Texas State Troopers. But this is happening in real time, and this is happening throughout the river where the Haitians on this side will bring supplies to the Haitians on the U.S. side. One thing that's pretty common is that some of the Haitians actually return to the Mexican side because due to the bad conditions and only eating one time a day. So we're seeing that in real time and them using this rope here to transport supplies over to that side. That's the U.S. side. That's Del Rio, Texas, and we've never seen really anything like this. But this is they're going back and forth, and the border is wide open. We'll give you guys all the updates as we get them here in Ciudad Acuña, Mexico. Once again, I'm Jorge Ventura, reporter with the Daily Caller.
Now remember, Secretary Mayorkas says the border is closed. Does that look closed to you? They are channeling supplies back and forth. Texas Governor Greg Abbott is about the only person who has made any effort here by sending state troopers to form a vehicular wall of sorts. And this really begs the question that I've been asking for quite some time. What in the world is the federal government doing? All of the lip service coming from Mayorkas and Jen Psaki is entirely false. And then you have another false narrative that the horse-mounted agents were whipping the Haitian immigrants. That is false. The agents don't have whips. They have split reins to control the horse. But if you listen to Kamala Harris, whom Biden put in charge of the border situation, all she can talk about is this false narrative.
What I saw depicted about those individuals on horseback treating human beings the way they were is horrible. And I fully support what is happening right now, which is a thorough investigation into exactly what is going on there. But human beings should never be treated that way. And I'm deeply troubled about it. And I'll also be talking with Secretary Mayorkas today.
So your vice president is more worried about a false narrative than she is about the third world conditions, the lack of sensible policy, and public health danger from this surge in immigrants. Bottom line is, look at the border there. Nothing is preventing them from coming over, minus a few horsebacked agents or other state law enforcement. But these are all Texas state guys. These are not feds. So why don't Mayorkas, Harris, or Biden gain control of the border situation? See, this is why we have such incompetence. They don't treat the source of the problem. It's like they allow the problem to fester so that it can create other problems. But it also shows the extreme hypocrisy of this situation. Permitting camps of 15,000 people who are all huddled together in squalor is a recipe for a health disaster. Yet they're all telling you that you need to take a jab or mask up wherever you go. Remember that most of these migrants are just being given notices to appear, which means they are now freely roaming the country. This gets exploited by our asylum system. Trump also had a remain in Mexico policy, or more formally, migrant protection protocols, which means that an asylum claimant would have to remain in Mexico as their claim was being processed. On August 25th, the Supreme Court reinstated this policy, noting that the Biden administration had violated federal law by getting rid of the policy. The Trump administration also had safe third country agreements, which meant that if a migrant was passing through a country deemed safe on its way to their intended asylum, that the migrant would have to first apply in the safe third country. Biden tried to upend all of these policies on day one, and so far has been very unproductive in doing so, especially in the court system. They now try to claim that they are using Title 42 under the guise of public health. But when you look at that bridge in Del Rio, nobody would consider that a safe public space. And Biden is just out there mumbling and stumbling around, committing more of our money to countries impacted by climate change. The man is literally out there at the United Nations pledging more of our money to other countries. We gave millions to Haiti, millions. And what did that get us? Do you see how this is in direct opposition to America First? It's basically America Last. Inflation is rising. Biden wants a massive spending spree on social programs. Afghanistan is lost. He cuts deals to undermine allies like France, and the border is an absolute mess. If terrorists around the world are watching how porous that area of Texas is, what in the world would we expect them to do? We are 20 years out from 9/11, so how can we permit this? And then what about the cartels and the traffickers? They know what's going on. They're constantly improvising to make sure that their products get into the United States. Furthermore, they are financially benefiting not just from the drug trafficking, but also human trafficking, preying on the laws and directives coming right from the White House, especially regarding families and unaccompanied minors. You would think that with a major public health crisis like COVID, with as much fear-mongering as there has been, that Biden would just seal the border and say, sorry guys, we have to get our numbers down before we can let anybody else in. But it took the Supreme Court to say, no sir, you cannot rescind the migrant protection protocols. So what does Biden do? He tries to use Title 42, citing the public health risk. Well, if that's the case, Why are we seeing 15,000 Haitians under a bridge in Texas that just get released into the U.S.? And who is paying for those deportation flights? That's a lot of planes and a lot of fuel. I have to take an aside here to think about what the captain says on those flights.
Welcome to Asylum Airways. This is your captain speaking. Looks like a pretty good day to fly to Port-au-Prince today. Probably a lot cooler in here than that bridge y'all were under earlier. Be sure to open those air vents above your head if you get a little toasty. And please keep those masks over your nose and...
What's that?
Sorry, don't worry about the masks, I'm being told. Flight attendants will be coming through the cabin to serve some light refreshments and some Biscoff cookies. We know you have a lot of choices when you fly, so thanks for choosing Asylum Airways. And please, sit back and relax and enjoy your 4-hour flight to Haiti, where the temperature is a balmy 95 degrees, and we're not sure if we have air traffic controllers there.
More than 600,000 illegal immigrants have been released into the U.S. by the Biden administration, according to Brandon Judd, president of the National Border Patrol Council. What's enticing them? Well, that would be the catch and release policy. They catch you, they release you. They say show up in court, and very few do. What's more, if a woman is pregnant, or if she claims if she's pregnant, they are releasing them into the U.S. and saying, please show back up in 60 days. Furthermore, on one of the smugglers' trails, journalists have found what seems to be Haitians discarding Chilean ID cards. Now, the reason that they discard them is that it would show that these Haitians had already found comfortable asylum for years in places like Chile and Brazil. And they don't want the asylum reviewers to see that. When was Joe Biden last seen at the border? Do you know that a reporter asked Jen Psaki whether Joe Biden had ever been to the southern border in his entire life? She said she'd have to get back to him. She had no reply. Not while a VP, not while a senator, not while president. In 40 plus years in government, they couldn't find one time where he had visited the border. And why is Texas having to use their own resources to do what the federal government should be doing? When you have a problem as serious as this one, why do we see our leaders fielding other priorities? Senator Ted Cruz has been down there. Many lawmakers have been down there to assess the situation. But the president and vice president are MIA, or they're posing for another photo opportunity. This immigration system is broken, and even the Supreme Court has ruled that Biden is breaking the laws. How in the world can you go on TV and claim to be trying to stem a pandemic when you let the border open? How can you ask for trillions in spending when you're letting freeloaders hop onto the system? How can you commit taxpayer money to climate change when you have inflation in this country? How can you go in front of the UN General Assembly and not talk about China's aggression and responsibility for the pandemic? It has become plain as day that this administration does not take the border crisis seriously. Let's not kid ourselves. Which means it does not take your health and your safety seriously. So if you're a Democrat or someone who voted for Joe Biden, are you okay with this? Does this make you feel better that Biden's tweets are more nice? Or rather that someone else tweets for him? Because unless you're prepared to take in these immigrants and house them and clothe them and feed them and welcome them as your neighbors, then you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth. You can't have it both ways. I've heard elite champagne socialists talk about how great compassionate immigration policies are and open borders policies are, but not one of them is willing to open their houses to them. Not one is willing to donate their income to support them. It's the AOC tax the rich crowd. I can't blame Haitians for wanting to come here. Our country is a palace by comparison. But this administration is not applying sensible policy, particularly in the middle of a pandemic, when we are being asked to restrict our travel and our behavior. Biden and Harris are out to lunch on this. Literally. I see them eating lunch with Boris Johnson or whatever while the border goes unprotected. The vice president is more concerned with a false narrative than she is controlling the flow of migration. If she were serious, she'd be down there right now, asking Border Patrol and authorities what she can do to help, or at the very least, assess the situation. But she's more concerned about the conduct of one agent on a horse than the conduct of 15,000 non-citizens. That's backwards. The media is being dishonest about this too. They aren't properly reporting the reality of the situation. Rarely do they press Biden or Harris about this. This begs the larger question. Do you want open borders or do you not? It's a simple yet profound question because it determines a lot of our future in terms of the economy, healthcare, future pandemics, and public safety. You have to think long term here. We can be both humanitarian and cautious. Many portray those who want stricter border policies as xenophobic or anti-immigrant. That's not true. If you look back at Ellis Island and how immigration was processed back then, many factors were taken into consideration. They were considering public health and plagues even back then. So what do? Well, we pursue responsible action. We don't let emotion guide us, but reason and everyone's well-being. Taco Bell implied that we should make a run for the border to get their delicious Mexican-style tacos. But now people are making a run from the other side of the border to get to America. I'm Beau, and that's the show.